Hello, everybody. Today we have Richard Seroter in the podcast for the second time. I'm really, really excited about this podcast. Richard, lots of change, lots of exciting things happening in AI, your role within Google Cloud. So please walk us through about what you've been working on.
Hmm. Yeah, a lot changes day to day, doesn't it? It's not even just year to year since the last time you and I chatted. But yeah, I'm Richard. I head up developer relations, tech writing, and such at Google Cloud, and title of chief evangelist, which means no one understands what I do, which is fine. But yeah, day to day, it's about making sure developers are inspired and activated to use Google Cloud. You do that with authentic stuff. How do you understand the needs? How do you show how to use products? How do you meet them in person and listen to concerns and help them get through it? So, spent plenty of my time as a product manager, as a product marketer, as an architect, as an engineer. Hopefully, all of that for a lot of you all is, and we all have weird backgrounds. We have different experiences, which hopefully make us relatable to the people we talk to.
Yeah. So Richard, moving from, you were a director of outbound product management, leading a team of product manager, and now you're doing a lot of developer relationship and building developer products. So wanted to understand at Google Cloud, like what is the AI strategy that you guys been working on?
Yeah, that's a big question. So, I mean, Google does unique things in AI, obviously, starting with even the fundamentals of research. Google DeepMind does some of the most interesting work in this industry, uncovering ideas, working through ideas, shipping models. And so we have these foundational models like Gemini. Definitely plenty of people are now using to do, hey, multimodal things like create video, create image, do text, do understanding. Google also builds its own processors or tensor processing units or TPUs that actually help us train and serve models like this. And then you have platforms at Google like Vertex for people to serve their models and create agents and create applications and things like that, all the way up through things like AI assistants for all of us who get prompted in Gmail to get a little AI help writing an email or do it with a document, or to coding assistants with things like Gemini Code Assist. So we have a kind of a unique vertical stack of things, from AI assistants to agent builders and frameworks to platforms to the models to the research to the chips. And the goal is to make sure that AI is widely useful and ubiquitous in that stack, not just gimmicky, like weird stuff, but like, is this helpful? Is this helping us do our job better, search better, build better? I think it is. And that's the sort of information and trends you see here. But it'll be fun chatting with you about how does this impact, again, not just developers, but product managers and finance people and
Yeah,
operators and all sorts of folks. I'm hard pressed to think of any role, especially in a modern company, that's not going to take advantage of this.
100%. Yeah. I mean, the technology is really exciting and disruptive, and it's giving product managers, product owners, I mean, developers, superpowers, right? So I want to do a deep dive around like the core role of product managers when it comes to product strategy. And as you've led teams of product managers, how do you think about the role of product managers in product strategy, especially with the rise of AI and building AI powered products?
Yeah. You ask big, broad questions. That's good. Yeah. Where do product managers play? I mean, it depends how you define strategy, which there's, you ask 10 people, you'll get 12 definitions. But if you look at, is it where to play and how to win? It was like that definition of how are product managers helping you understand, first off, where to play? What's the landscape? How does AI help you understand the landscape? How do you synthesize tons of information and get it baked down into where there's maybe an opportunity? That might have taken us weeks before. You can solve that in a few minutes today by passing in, hey, all sorts of business reports, earnings calls, industry analysis, all into a model like Gemini. Say, hey, can you help me understand where there's gaps or openings here, and get answers back immediately? It's unbelievable. So a lot of the product manager's job, I believe, when they're doing strategy, is understanding the landscape. What's going on out there? Where should we be playing? And then once you do that, sometimes you don't always have a right to play everywhere. Not every business can go win in every market. Just because you're good in this market doesn't mean you can win an adjacency or something completely different. So do you understand where I can play, but then how can I win? You can't be first or second at something. What are you doing in that space? So how do you think about where can we win? And then what are the sort of tech things we need in this product strategy? Do we go for low cost? Are we going for premium experience? Are we going for wild differentiation? Are we going for partnership? A sort of sell through motion where We just have to be okay, but we're going to have amazing partnerships and moats around that. So I think a good product manager is not just taking orders from customers or from executives and then turning around and telling engineers to go build stuff. They're looking at sometimes that request, frankly, initiating some of them, understanding where should this product go so that we can be wildly successful, being able to say no if that request doesn't work. I think the best parts of strategy is what you're not going to do.
Yeah.
Most people don't think about that, but like that's how you focus. A good strategy is focused. What are we trying to do? How will we measure success?
Yeah.
Why is this something we can win at? And then these are things we're going to ignore on purpose so that we can do a good job.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great take, Richard. I've focused on consulting startups and like, building my own 0 to 1 products. But I'm just
Mm.
really curious, like when you're working for a company like Google that has millions and millions of customers and you set out to create a vision for a product and you want to build certain solution for certain sets of the customers, how do you evaluate whether if it's worth building with AI, using your own, Google products? What's that process like for Google?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, probably at the same, different scale, I guess, but probably a similar process for everybody is you're always starting with some hypothesis, some need that you're trying to test. I mean, the good organizations are learning faster than anyone else. I mean, that feels like one of the few remaining competitive advantages in most industries is are you learning faster than a competitor? And so even if you have that hypothesis, how quickly can I put that in front of someone, either as user research or prototypes? Google has a good, obviously, distribution so people we can experiment in different ways, but honestly, and sometimes you stop those. I think that some cost fallacy is very tricky for product leaders. You have to know when to quit. Like we got to all get better at quitting. Sometimes you start something, go, this actually will has a really low probability of turning into something meaningful. And by wasting more and more time on this, I'm actually taking away resources from something that has a better chance of winning. And so
Yeah.
I think in a lot of this process, whether you're building AI products or regular products or whatever, how fast are you getting some of those signals that not only is this going to be useful, but can this be a winner? Because again, usefulness and even maybe even break even is not the goal, I don't think, for anybody. It's that
Yeah.
this thing is a wildly worthwhile investment that returns profits and helps us keep doing new things or helps us grow. Just surviving is not
Yeah.
really a strategy.
100%. And Richard, we're talking Google, right? Like the opportunity cost is, hundreds of millions for, not spending your time and effort on the right problem that you want to solve. So thanks for articulating that, knowing when to quit, because there are probably, hundreds of opportunities that Google can go and make that a, $100 million plus opportunity.
Well, I mean, and to that point, real quick, I think that people can assume that big companies have unlimited resources. You're sadly mistaken. Like it's still people constrained, and it's still, hey, we're not growing a ton of headcount. We're a big company, but we're not growing all the time now. So how do we really strategically say, hey, you really talented PM or engineer, you're going to spend the next year working on this? That is a very serious investment.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to waste any of that. So how
Yeah.
do we make sure, even at big companies or small companies, I don't think any of us are just wasting time. And
Mm.
so we have to be ruthless to some
Yeah.
extent as product leaders going, is this worth it? Is this, even if it made a bunch of customers happy,
Mm.
can I keep making them happy if I keep investing in it this way? Sometimes the answer is no.
Yeah. When the product folks are, coming up with an opportunity canvas, right? How big of an opportunity does it need to be for Google
Hmm.
or, what does it need for Google to say, heck yes, we're going to go after this, or we're going to spend our time and resources into building this? What are some things that needed for Google to go after opportunities?
Yeah. I mean, it still goes back to strategy though, because not every strategy is to make $1 billion. So you want to be successful in things, but nobody starts an open source project or nobody starts certain efforts because they think they can necessarily print money. Those things sometimes by definition won't make money. And so now there's indirect benefit. And we say, hey, if we do this thing, we'll attract another million developers to the platform who will then start clicking the meter on something that does generate revenue. Fine. And not every product has a direct link to this is something that can become the new $1 billion business. You always want those. Like, can this thing drive at least our bigger strategic goals? Even if it by itself, look, our clouds, a lot of companies have loss leaders. There's plenty of products in Google Cloud and every big provider that don't necessarily make direct revenue. They're given away for free. or they're just an add-on. And so you have all of this cost to actually build it and deliver it, but you don't actually monetize it. But
Mm,
that thing maybe attracts people to your platform overall, where they do use something that costs money, or it makes them sticky and say, you know what, I want to stick around here. And so, sometimes you give away something so that you can kind of build loyalty for something else. All of those sort of things may have a different strategy, but they should click up to the master strategy of like, what are we doing here? If our goal is to deliver this, we might have a tactic here around free services. We might have a tactic here around some sort of partner giveaway. We might have something here that's a upsell. All of those things can justify the investment. And so when a Google team decides they want to do more things, or they want to build something new, you're often seeing, how does this fit the overall strategy? And then what will this do to support that?
amazing. Yeah. Richard, in your career, what have you seen? What are the skill set and mindset of successful product managers? And if you can also add on to like what does that look like now, especially for AI powered product managers?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is changing. I mean, I don't know how fast product managers are picking up AI, but if they don't think their job is changing, I think again, they're mistaken. And again, the fundamentals don't have to change. If you look at what PMs need to be good at, right? I mean, that's, some of those things are timeless. How do I understand my market? Okay, I might use AI to help with that. That could make sense. How well do I do prioritization, especially when I have a backlog of content? How do I do user research and sentiment analysis? How do I build roadmaps? How do I might generate user guides and requirements docs and plan those? How do I do A/B testing or do competitive intelligence? How do I build prototypes? So when I look at the skills I would be thinking about for PMs, frankly for everybody right now, do I have a certain humility that I don't know stuff? Good PMs do not think they have all the answers. They are not the CEO of the product. I think we talk about that from time to time, but in reality, you're leading through influence, not authority. And so you have to be humble. Like, hey, I don't know the answer. I'm going to go get it though. I'm going to go talk to users. I'm going to go understand our business requirements. So a good PM leader doesn't come in going, I have a playbook. I run this every time. This is how we do stuff. No, no, you don't. You got to come in, figure out your settings, figure out your requirements, figure out who we're talking to. And so you got to come in humble. You also have to come in very curious. The best PMs are curious. They challenge assumptions. And I think of our PM interviews that I still participate in at Google. You're looking for a certain curiosity. Do they ask clarifying questions or do they immediately solve the problem? Stop that. If I ask you an interview question about designing a refrigerator for blind people, I don't want you to immediately start designing that refrigerator. I want you to step back, go, who am I going after here? What is the pain point that a blind person might have with an appliance? How do I think about that? Am I going after the US market or is this international? Is this a high value top thing or do I have to go low cost? Good PMs are endlessly curious. Now, not to the point where they paralyze themselves and then they can't actually do any work. Because, at some point, it's diminishing returns. Stop asking questions. You got to make some progress. But good PMs are extremely curious. They don't just take things at face value. They'll even the data. Where'd that data come from? Is that even valid data? I mean, let me go check that. So you're humble, you're curious, and then frankly, you're pretty disciplined. Because again, I think you have a lot of people who can be very theoretical in this space, and like stop, you got to be disciplined that you produce. You're dependable, even when you're not motivated to do it. You got to deliver. Hey, you got to write that spec. That engineering team is waiting on you. You got to go. Like, I don't want you to endlessly do analysis here. Like that team, break it down more. Give them something smaller to work on. Are you disciplined about doing A/B testing or quality checks? Are you disciplined about communications with marketing to give them the right message? So I think sometimes you can have brilliant people who are just impossible to extract anything from because they just swirl around forever. So do you have a good discipline about output and production and delivering value? Those things are timeless. And yes, can you use AI better? Yep. You should be using AI through that. Can you build up your technical skills? Yeah, look, I think enough PMs sometimes stay too far away from the product. I think you should be customer zero of your product. If you don't use the product that you're the PM from, something seems wrong to me. Now, some things you can't use if it's a space shuttle. I don't expect you to fly every day. But most of us are probably building products we should be using more ourselves. So we have that right empathy, understanding, again, curiosity. So all those things are things I look at. I think things that matter for a modern PM to be successful.
Amazing. Richard, so this is really cool that we get to hear from you. A lot of our audience are also product owners and product
Mm.
managers at a lot of companies that might not be AI first, right? They have adapted it a little bit. I've talked to a handful of product owners, product managers where they're not even allowed to use ChatGPT or some of these AI tools, right? They're using that in their workflow. They're learning. But what's your take? Because you're going out there and you're influencing a lot of organizations and developers to think AI first. What would be your advice to, as a product owner or a product leader, product manager, how do you enable your team, your designers, your engineers, your marketers, maybe even your stakeholders to think AI first without, overcomplicating the user
Mm.
experience? Like, how do you think through that problem?
Yeah, it's a good problem. A friend of mine, Brian Chambers, works at Chick-fil-A. They're one of their lead architects. Wrote a good post this week on kind of being this ready first pattern. Like first you have to be ready, whether it's mobile ready, cloud ready, whatever, before you can be first. I can't be AI first if I'm not AI ready, right? And so what's it mean to even get ready? And if you're at a shop who's still like, I don't know about this AI thing, you're not going to be AI first for a while. You got to get AI ready, that you have to do what we're doing in my team and then in my organization to build AI fluency across the entire team. Every single human in the product area I'm part of, from my executive assistant up to my general manager, is all going through level 100 training on AI. Now, does that mean that my assistant needs to know how to fine tune a model? No, that's insane. I wouldn't ask that. But should they understand what that term is, or that LLM is capable of looking up real time information? Yeah, they should know that. Or that an agent can do some of this sort of background work and thinking work. We got to get fluency. That's going to first off make us less anxious about some of this. Let's make sure everybody at least understands use cases, capabilities, some fundamental terms. And then you start to lower the temperature. Everyone's not like AI's terrifying and scary. It's instead, well, how does this a tool for me? And so even in my team now, I asked the team to come up with ways that they could improve their work with AI and get rid of some toil. Where is there something that drives you bonkers where AI might be able to help? And we got a couple of dozen submissions. We're going to pick a few and start going on them. So, make it something where the people feel like this is, hey, our work. How do we make our work better? Not just some executive coming over the top going, be 50% more productive tomorrow with AI. Doesn't work. You got to build some comfort and things there. But at the same time, I'm not sure. I think there's always a change management here. I've been saying to some folks, I think the technology is a lot further ahead than the psychology. Like the tech is ready, we're not ready. And so we're not mentally there. And so the tech can do it. We're not ready to give up certain things. We're not ready to trust certain things. It's going to take some time. But at some point, myself included, you start to just encourage this by setting goals that are almost unrealistic without it. And that's what I'm starting to do. There's going to be certain goals I'm going to give my team, which are physically impossible to do as just humans. Because at some point, I need you to reset your thinking and go like, where is something where I could squeeze out an extra 10% of performance myself just by working harder, working weekends? I don't want that. I actually want 3x the output with 5% less effort.
Mm.
The only way you're going to do that is by saying, how do I get smarter and say, instead of doing this 12-hour task, maybe it can be a 10-minute task that I can get AI to do a bunch of cool stuff that helps me do all these things I didn't like to do before. So you got to build comfort bottoms up. You got to build support. But then at some point, as leaders, product leaders, organization leaders, team leaders, you got to encourage the team. Can't wait forever. So we're going to set ambitious goals that the company needs us to hit, and probably it's unachievable without changing how we work.
Mm, amazing. Yeah, so I mean, tech is smarter, so you just assume that tech can do it, and then you try until, where you get stuck, and you stay curious and you enable the teams.
Yeah, it's not going to be perfect. Look, does your team spend hours coming up with synthetic data to test their new system? Guess what? I can generate that in 30 seconds with Gemini. What are you doing? Like, why are you handcrafting fake data for your stuff? It's a waste of time. It's not adding any value. And so it's not even saying take all the fun stuff out of your job and give it to the robots. It's that there's probably a ton of toil in the way we do things where it's actually not adding a ton of value to throw human effort at it. So let's have this AI do it for me and I can focus on the cool stuff.
Amazing. I want to spend a little bit of time. I have a few more questions around building trust and transparency into the product, but
Mm.
I want to go a little bit more into the product owner role. I mean, we did the first podcast about product ownership. So, as
Yeah.
a leader on the execution level, right? What are you looking for now in the product owner talent, or how should they upskill and evolve with, this AI in the AI era?
Yeah, it'll be contextual as well to what your organization supports. But I was even spending this week with some teams who are looking at how product leaders can do better prototyping with some of these tools. I think the days of us writing 50-page specs as the only communication tool are going to come to an end, and that you're instead going to hand a working prototype to a team. Look, you and me, even if you haven't coded in ever or a year, I can go to Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini Canvas, and say, hey, look, I'm trying to build a web app. It's for financial planning. It does this. And in moments, I'm natural language communicating with this thing to build an artifact. Then I could say, hey, let me just share a link this with my engineering team and go, like, not production ready. This isn't the thing, but this is what I'm thinking. And so instead of just laboring over these docs, which nobody reads anyway, maybe we start to think of new artifacts. And so I need PMs to be thinking about, how do I communicate my ideas better? Is it visual? Is it a video? Is it a better presentation? These AI tools are helping me build maybe a video representation of how my users would interact with the service. Or here's the actual web application or component. So you're going to look for skills of, like, PMs, product owners got to get better at prototyping. Even if you're not a coder, I think the excuses are over. Like, there's amazing tools now where you can express your idea outside of a document. Still use Google Docs. We want to have all the users
Yeah.
we can, but use video, use presentations, use actual working code to communicate your ideas. So that's one big area where I think the modern product owner has to own that translation of idea to representation better.
Mm. Yeah. Big part of, bringing the vision is like inspiring the team, right? And when you can
Yeah,
show them the prototype, and show the excitement, "Oh, this is how I'm visualizing," and bringing in stakeholders and engineers and, QAs. I mean, that could be really, really powerful. And I mean,
it can.
Google
And
has,
maybe
and
even
yeah.
maybe even help you vet the idea before you give it to the engineer. We've all worked with engineers, be like, this is a dumb idea. Why am I building this? And if you said instead, like, I built the prototype, I actually screamed it past 10 users as just an idea as a click through and let them see it. I got this interesting feedback, iterated. I think we have something here. That's data now. That's not even just your wacky idea for a prototype. You could actually now give this to somebody before you threw it to an engineer. You're doing some of that work. And so I think some PMs can't just be, again, product owners, product managers. We are not order takers. There's a creative aspect to this where if the customer just said, I want this, executive just said, I want that, and I'm a pass through. You know what? That job's going away. Like, at some point, I don't need that job. You're literally just a translation hub. I might as well just go straight to the engineer.
Mm.
Instead, we got to think about, how do we, again, synthesize those ideas, test them out, prototype them, experiment, prioritize, stack rank. That's the nature of this job. Don't just be a pass through.
Yeah. And Richard, I was talking to actually a Google engineer this week, and I asked, he's an engineer, and I asked him, like, "Hey, have you like 5x, 10x your output?" And he said 100x, and I didn't believe it. I was like, Do you
Sure.
really see it's like, is he bluffing, or like, is it really 100x that
Mm.
developers are able to produce from not without using AI?"
I mean, I don't think that. I think there's still a context for that.
Yeah,
Of course, true.
yeah.
But we know we have numbers internal to Google that show how much we're actually saving with AI, and it's still material. But hey, look, there's a lot of software engineering, there's a lot of product delivery, which has nothing to do with technology, at least
Mm,
entirely, right? I mean, the best engineers in the world spend like 30% of their time coding at best. So who cares if I keep fixing coding? I still have to fix 70% of their day. Same with PMs and product owners. Like, it's amazing if this thing can help me write a doc faster, build a prototype faster, but there's still planning meetings. There's still user research sessions. There are still all the things that go into actually working with humans and trying to decide on priorities. And so you can, again, use tech to fix some of those things. But I
mm,
think getting to 100x is, again, in certain tasks, absolutely. There are things now where, just this week, I had tweeted it out. I was in a hotel and I walked by the front desk and there was a clock on the wall. And the clock just used words like, it's a quarter past whatever, or it's, 10 minutes to 5. Like, that's really cool. And I walked back to my room and went to the Gemini Canvas app and said, I went to Google AI Studio actually, and just said, hey, I want to build a clock, an app that shows a clock that just uses words, doesn't use any numbers. And it took one prompt and I ended up with an HTML page. That would have taken me 3 days. I'm not that good. I'd probably ever, but definitely not now, to build that. So that's something where I did something in maybe 3 minutes that would have taken me 3 days. In that particular task, that's unbelievable. That's a 100x improvement. Is that everything? Of course not. But for a handful of things, we are doing it the hard way right now. And we're being stubborn about it. And we got to stop that and say, like, we're purposely doing this the hard way and it's actually not necessary. And so, how do you challenge all those preconceived notions? Again, have that curiosity saying, why am I still doing this like that? Maybe I should try it like this, and embrace that sort of discomfort and know that you still add value, but add value differently.
Mm, amazing take. So my question is for the product owner, like working with teams that are, let's say, AI ready. They're not AI
Mm,
first, they're
yeah.
AI ready. What are some actionable things that they could do when working with engineering, design, QA around like delivering, right? Like, what are some actionable things we can maybe highlight for AI ready teams?
Yeah. I mean, look, we talked about some of them, whether that's prototypes, whether that's even coming up with proposed test suites. Maybe that is thinking about not just the simple unit test, but like, hey, how would I actually test this experience? Again, AI may help me look at this whole requirement spec and come up with all the different ways from performance to usability to functional. And maybe I hand the testing team like, hey, here's a head start. Now, again, at the same time, we're saying AI a lot here. I think the key is you're probably dealing with many of the same artifacts. We're just doing them differently. And so an AI ready PO team, product ownership team, or PM team, they might be giving some of the same artifacts to engineers or marketers or testers or whatever. They're just doing it faster, or they're doing it frankly more complete,
Mm,
or heck, they're even doing it in different languages. What if you have a giant distributed team and English isn't their first language and they struggle with your requirement stocks? Translate it. Give it to them in French. What do I care? Give it to them in Mandarin. Like, it doesn't matter. These are things we wouldn't even have thought of before. We would have just said, hey, struggle through it. I don't have to anymore. Or if
yes.
I'm writing user supporting documents, again, maybe I can think about how do I use these tools to create the public user guide instead of doing it myself. I'll give it my requirement stock, API spec, and then ask it to give me a user guide that I can send to my customers. And then maybe I hand that to the sales team or the marketing team. So I might still give those same artifacts like I always did. I'm just doing it faster and better than I did before. And will we come up with new artifacts? Probably. I think software delivery is going to still change in fundamental ways. It's not just we're going to do the same workflow faster. I don't think that's true. I think parts of the workflow will actually change. I don't know exactly how yet, but yeah, for now, I think many of these things are we should just be doing this better than we are now. And the teams that are AI ready are going to probably see a higher throughput. Same time, you could see worse quality if you're not careful. You could see bigger mistakes if you don't keep the expertise in your team, or if you just blindly create AI content and shove it across the board. Might be wrong. It might not have the right stuff. So I'd encourage everybody who's listening to this, everybody in this field, don't get weaker as a product manager. Get stronger. Understand products and techniques, understand frameworks, understand the tech, but use these tools to augment you. Don't replace yourself. Just augment yourself and then still own that content. Make sure it's accurate. Make sure it's has everything it needs. You're just going to go faster.
Yeah, amazing. So, so product thinking becomes really important, right? And coming up with solid hypothesis, thought through hypothesis, and being able to run experiments becomes really important. How do product managers, how would you, for somebody who's starting out as a product manager, how would you recommend that they get better at these product thinking skills,
Mm.
experimentation mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I can ask you the same question. Be interested in your take. I mean, some of this is repetition, just getting some experience. I mean, I think it's hard to be. I mean, my first product role, I was fortunate to have some mentors. I had no idea what I was doing. And it was good just be around people who I could observe and learn because it's a hard field to just pick up. Like, just, I don't know, is anyone bored with product thinking? I don't know. I think it's a learned skill. And so, how do you decompose problems? Think of personas, think of metrics, think of an ecosystem. Those are not natural behaviors for most of us. And so in many cases, it's repetition or it's being around the right mentors. It's, making sure that you're getting examples of what this looks like. And there's no blueprint. You shouldn't copy what one person's doing it for yourself, but you should be learning from them and seeing what they're doing. So getting good at product thinking, understanding how to think again in terms of the personas, the opportunities, the strategic effort, like who is this product for? My least favorite thing to ever see in a product requirement doc is the total addressable market. If it's a garbage number because almost no product ever actually has access to the total addressable market. There's service addressable market. There's all these other variations, but somebody goes, hey, There are 49 million developers in the world, and our strategy is to get them to all use our product. Right? You're not a critical thinker right now. You got to stop. Like, you don't have access to 49 million developers. You will not get them. Now, are you trying to win developers in North England? All right. Maybe you have an audience there because you already have maybe a foothold with them. And so that's your addressable market. Amazing. And so for a lot of product thinkers, we get too big and broad. Oh, I'm going to go after this whole thing. And no, be thoughtful on who's my customer, who's my non-customer, what is the metric or the goal I'm actually chasing here? How will I go achieve it in a reasonable way, in a reasonable timeline that makes that investment worth it? So if I'm 6 years in and made no progress, what am I doing? So I think you got to learn that. It's great to have mentors. It's great to watch others. We all can get stuck in the moment, not realizing we're going down the wrong path. And so we need sometimes people outside to help us steer. So I think about that. I mean, I'm fortunate to always be surrounded by people smarter than me, which helps, and I can learn from them. But yeah, I find the right people who can course correct you.
Yeah. Richard, and in my what I've been doing is, just challenging my assumptions around how products are, built,
Mm.
traditional things that I've, grown up learning because right now I have access to, like you said, amazing products that are being built that's
Yeah.
kind of breaking the traditional sense of how products are built. What does success look like? So really like, looking at my own blind spots and challenging my own assumption about how
Yeah.
things should be and having conversations with people like you and people who have different skill set developers have done interesting things. So and I'm realizing the ROI for learning product skills in as a product owner or product manager, it's not 2x 3x, it's 100x, it's 1000x if you extrapolate that around your 10 years career, 20 years career, right? So and AI simply is helping accelerate learning some of these things really quick and running experiments, learning fast. So one maybe last question around this product execution, a little bit of strategy is like, what are some tools within Google or any other AI tools that you are using in your day-to-day life, and what are some tools that you're excited about using more of them?
Yeah, I mean, Google internally has a lot of things that probably look like everyone else's in terms of task planning tools. How do you plan a release or backlog management, sprint planning? So we've got tools for that. A lot of work happens in Google Docs and spreadsheets, right? How do I plan things? How do I understand my opportunities? Start to scope out work. We work really closely with our UX research team here, who is a dedicated group. They can go run user research, run studies. Some of those are qualitative, where I'm going to go literally have people and watch what they do or ask them questions, get their just verbatim feedback. Some are quantitative, where it's, hey, I'm sending out surveys or I'm even doing instrumentation in some of my systems to do even a synthetic test of A/B stuff or whatever. Great. So, do you have access to A/B testing tools, experimentation tools? Yeah, Google engineers can run experiments and PMs can run experiments, which is great. They can do their planning. Again, prototyping tools using things like Gemini. Absolutely. You should be using those kind of tools to help you prototype or even help write a draft of a user guide or things like that. Doing market research. Look, for many folks, it's still just opening up Google Chrome and doing web searches or doing social listening on Reddit or X or whatever and LinkedIn going, what are people complaining about? Or where is this a pain point? How come I keep seeing that? Going to events. We just had Google Cloud Next in Vegas a few weeks ago. A lot of PMs there who are either just kind of listening and doing breakout talks and hearing the questions or actually doing one-on-one with customers, because in my experience sometimes PMs can get stuck on an anecdote they heard 2 years ago and somehow that drives everything they do. You got to keep getting fresh insights. You got to hear a new customer feedback every week, every couple of days. Not, well, 3 years ago a customer said they needed this, that drives our whole strategy. Get out of here. Like, you got to keep hearing new voices, new ideas. And so, for a lot of PMs, it's hitting the shop floor. It's walking around. It's go meeting a customer, jumping on a call, getting that feedback. That's not even tools. That's just doing the work of like getting out of your bubble, talking to new users, going to events, or even just, doing social listening, because not everyone can travel everywhere. Get it. It's free, I think, to open up LinkedIn or X or Blue Sky or YouTube or any of these tools or Reddit. See what are people talking about? Where's this pain point? What's going on? So many ways to do research and be thoughtful with that. Google engineers use many of the same things everybody else does, but sometimes this is just the almost the hard work of it, not the tools. Like the tools can be there, but you got to decide to use them, or you have to decide to say, I'm not waiting for a magic tool that does sentiment analysis. I just want to go out there and listen.
Amazing. Richard, I want to switch gear and kind of a little bit more about AI and Google Cloud, and a few things that I'm really curious about. Just your expertise in AI, right? So when companies are building AI products
Mhm.
inside Google, right, or at startups, right, what do you think people get wrong about? There's some misunderstanding about building AI products.
I have a colleague who she's brilliant, Anna Berenberg, and she had mentioned a while back that actually one of our engineering fellows that one of the bigger mistakes technical teams can make is they just drop a box called LLM into their architecture diagram. Like it is not that. Like you'll just take everything you're doing, and just add a box called LLMs, and everything stays the same. So when I'm building AI apps, my network traffic changes. My interaction patterns change with my applications. There's chattiness between these models. There's techniques I'm going to use to do real-time updates. And how do I think about that? Because I build an AI app. Look, LLMs are really amazing prediction machines. They're not really fact engines. That's why we have Google search. That's why we have things that literally return factual information. An LLM has a training cutoff date, right? If I ask an LLM today, especially like an open source one that had a training cutoff, who won the baseball game last night? Answers has no idea. It was trained a year ago. And so some of these things need to be augmented with real-time lookups. That's retrieval augmented generation, function calling, all these other techniques to say, how do I supplement what this amazing LLM does, but with also maybe real-time information from my customer support system or from my ticketing system? Because otherwise, this LLM could be giving weird answers to customers in my chatbot that has no idea that we shipped that product last week. That's not good. And so as I'm a builder of these systems, I have to be thinking about what is this thing returning? Is it returning general information? Okay, it doesn't matter its timeliness. Or is it returning something that happened yesterday? It has to know about that to give me better advice. I got to architect and design and do user experience things differently in that. So I think for some, it just would understanding the patterns you're using with these tools. Is this an agent? Is this something that works behind the scenes and does things proactively and plans and executes? Or is this a kind of once and done chat experience or an API that I ask something, I get something back? Okay. What am I trying to do? What is the user experience my customers want or my users want? I think a lot of that's pretty exciting and sophisticated. And just thinking that LLMs are just an API like every other that sit out there is a huge mistake, in that we are rethinking human interactions. I mean, right? We're rethinking how some of these things work, architecture plans, data strategies, API strategies. It's exciting. And so I think people building AI apps are still just building software. The patterns they employ, the sort of considerations they have to do for evaluations. Look, LLMs update all the time. Google ships a new small version like every 6 weeks or whatever, a couple months. It's amazing. But they do need a system in place to evaluate, hey, does this new one give me different answers than the old one? Do I have to prompt differently? Do I need different guardrails or different input? You don't want to just have your systems breaking left and right because you're updating your Anthropic model, your OpenAI model, your Google model. You have to have sophisticated eval techniques in mind. Even if it's not sophisticated, it's Richard or you just sitting there testing A and B, fine, but have something as a process in place. I think that stuff's really important. So you got to come into this again, AI ready to some extent, thinking about what should change. You could still limp your way through a terrible strategy and maybe even be successful with it, but I think you want to be more intentional. What do we need to get better at? What do we design differently? How should UX change? I think all that's in play.
Yeah. So in contrast to like traditional feature building, right? Let's say if I as a PM am thinking about designing an AI feature, LLM powered, and
Mhm.
how do I think about scoping an MVP differently than how I used to do it before?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully, as a product person, I mean, on one hand, many of us are terrible about not doing implementation, but from a product perspective, in many cases, maybe the product needs are the same as they would be AI or not, right? My need is that people need to be able to book travel reservations, which is an overly used AI scenario, but work with me here. So, the requirement might be the same. It's, hey, I, Richard, am trying to take a trip and I need to be able to do A, B, and C, and I have product requirements about what our system needs to support. Now, maybe I start to talk about, hey, some of it can handle natural language because, you're making a big trip and maybe you want to say something more specific than you just want a hotel in New York. You want to say, hey, I'm traveling with a family, one small kid. I'd really like to be by really cool attractions. And I want to say it in natural language. Okay. But then your engineers have to figure out, how do I use maybe AI then to translate natural language into the proper response when I return hotel booking ideas or a rental car because you're too far away from the attractions. And so as a PM or a product owner, you might be thinking about the interactions and even some of the requirements differently. You want to be careful not to dictate implementation. Oh, this will require retrieval augmented generation and this AI framework. No, it won't. Maybe leave that to your engineers. Always keep focused on who's your user persona. What are they trying to accomplish? What's their job to be done? And if you have to be a little more specific on the job to be done, because now you know about some AI interaction patterns and you're like, hey, it would be so much better for our user. Their job to be done would be solved so much better if we do this requirement differently. But I think you got to be careful as a PM not to, again, dictate implementation too much. And so keep focused on the jobs to be done, the personas, the goals. And then, yeah, be refreshed with what's possible. Google published we keep updating this blog post. I think it's 601 now use cases for AI from customers. And so sometimes you just got to be inspired by that. Flip through that blog post and just be like, oh, yeah, they did that with that. That's a cool pattern. And so maybe that would even update your requirements of what you think is possible. Because here, it's not art of the possible. What can I even do with AI powered systems? You don't always know. So be inspired by your peers. Look at a list like that and go, oh, a healthcare company does that. That's pretty cool. That might change your requirements, not your implementation yet, but it changes what you can ask for.
Amazing. I want to spend a few minutes about agent and agent platform, agent space that Google is creating for
Yeah.
a lot of companies, right? Like if you can define an agent and how you can build agents for your businesses, right? And how they can use agent space, kind of give us an overview of what's happening within Google to enable product owners, product managers, developer teams.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you can get a job anywhere now if you just say you know agents. Everyone wants to be aware of agents. Yeah, I mean, so look, agents are, it's a lot of definitions. I think for most people, they see it as, using LLMs with tools that can go reach out into their environments, whether that's talking to other systems or retrieve data. There's some level of thinking that happens in reasoning where these things often run proactively and even behind the scenes to go figure out what to do, make a plan, execute it, use those tools to achieve it based on some instructions that you provide. So this is different than just a classic web service or background job where you'd have to write all the conditional logic, do this, do this. I don't have to. I was building an agent over the weekend that uses a tool that looks up the weather and then uses a tool that retrieves some data about available booking times. And I can pass it into an agent saying, hey, when someone wants bookings, only give them results where it's going to be a sunny day. That logic for me to have written would have been insane. Like I'd have to figure out, oh gosh, what's the weather? Okay, it's sunny on Tuesday. What bookings are on Tuesday? I don't need to do any of that. I'm just handing that to our agent development kit with Google and then to Gemini, saying, here's the tools, here's my instruction and what I want to see happen. And it works and it's unbelievable. So I think as you see this mix of what's possible without having to hyper program everything,
This
because
is
these agents can
non-program,
work together.
Richard. So this is like no code, right? So you're just simply interacting with.
I mean, I write a little bit of code to provide tools to the frameworks and things and write some natural language instructions like, hey, this tool can give you the weather. This tool will give you back available booking times. And what you need to do is only give back booking times on sunny days. That's it. And then handing all that stuff means that the user gets back exactly what they want. So using tools like our agent development kit, LangChain, LangGraph, Crew AI, all these tools, tons of great frameworks. You can also do it just going raw at APIs like Gemini APIs or Claude APIs. These frameworks make it easier because they can manage these tools or they can manage the interaction patterns. So, start getting familiar with these even as product owners, because again, I think until you know what's possible, you might be constrained in what you even think of asking for. And if you think like, well, that's impossible. No, it's not. Like now you know what's possible. Maybe you would change your requirements. Maybe you would change how questions you ask your user about what behavior they need from your system. So yeah, all of these frameworks are amazing, but then you do need surfaces. That's why we build agent space. Is how do I have an internal facing tool? Almost think of it like a portal or an enterprise operating system in my head, of where you're able to log in and you register your custom built agents, use agents from Workday or Salesforce or Microsoft Outlook or whatever. and be able to say, hey, I'm trying to build a purchase order for this. Cool. And you're just working in that environment right there. Or, oh, cool. I like that. Can you just send that to the customer? Great. And you're seeing this almost interactivity that we've never really had when you had a classic SharePoint dashboard or something. It's all just very static or read only or
Yeah.
but now you're having this agentic experience that bubbles up,
Yeah.
which is exciting. And then you have tools like Vertex Agent Engine or using our Cloud Run to serve agents just to users in general. And so there's this whole ecosystem you have to think about. What are my agent building tools? Maybe low code. I can use Agent Space to build low code agents with no coding. And hey, analyze this data and then send me a report every Monday. Sounds good. Amazing. I can do that. I can write custom agents with frameworks like our agent development kit. I might use Agent Space. I might serve them in my own web applications. They're all powered by LLMs. Even our development kit, you could use us, you could use open models, you could use anybody's model, it doesn't matter. And then all that stuff, still needs governance and management and security. And so that's going to be the next frontier, I think, for a lot of folks is, what happens if I wake up tomorrow? I got 10,000 agents. Like, what are they all doing? How do I figure out what went wrong or why they promised that customer a discount or how does all this work? And so coming up with those guardrails and that kind of management environment, that's all rapidly coming. But you have to think about all that before you go too bonkers, putting agents everywhere.
Amazing. Last question for you, Richard. We're gonna do another podcast in 2 years.
Yeah.
As this accelerates, right?
Yeah.
Agentic RAG, agent space. As this is happening next 2 years, what is the exciting scenario for businesses with this kind of opportunity?
Yeah, it's a big question. Look, one thing we've actually started saying less around here is I think people get obsessed with the productivity word or the efficiency word with AI. And that could be, I don't know, office spacey or kind of dangerous of like, hey, how do we milk an extra, 2 hours a week of you? Like, that's not the point of this. The point is still for all of this is are we able to do better work faster at high quality that's very fulfilling and that solves huge customer need? I think we're going to be rapidly moving even faster to that, where we are doing all of us are either delivering products and services, feel like we are just building better things and better with less toil. I don't want to work 70 hours a week. I don't aspire to that. I like my family. I like what I do on the weekends. I love what I do, but I don't want to be obsessed with it. So I want to be able to use these things to do better work. Now, at the same time, look, jobs are going to change. Work is changing. Life is changing. Absolutely. That's will have big impact. Do you want to be impacted by it or do you want to be the one impacting it? I think that's a decision you have to make. You are either going to be passively impacted by all this stuff because things are just happening to you around you. Will you be the one that is thinking through creative ideas, remaking your own career, your plans, your techniques, your company with this? I think probably most of the people that are listening here to you and others, they're not going to be passive with this. They want to be on their front foot. They want to be the ones defining this industry, not waiting for it to define them. So hopefully in 2 years, the people who got on this, maybe their jobs did change. Maybe something did happen, but they were leading the charge. And I think I would encourage everybody here, don't wait for things to happen to you. Go make it happen.
Beautiful. Really enjoyed this episode, Richard. Thank you so much for your insights. I learned a lot.